welcome to the Thursday Advanced Business Workshop. Today we're gonna learn about the Immigrant Investor Program, right? As you know, the need, to the need, for this types of investment, for the visa, it's at the all-time high right now, you know. And so I came from Vietnam, back in 1989. I went from Vietnam to China, then make my way to Hong Kong in Christmas of 1989. So it's been 31 years ago, right? So um, came to the U.S. in 1993. So for me, part of this program that I'm sharing with you is also my own experience of what I've been through, right? So as for example, in Seattle, Washington, and Western Washington, we also have over $2 billion of FDI, foreign direct investment into our community, to this particular program, right? So why it is that the investment program through to this regional center program, right? So the first benefit that the investor gonna look at, and so where the investor coming from, and why do we need to invest to converting the visa into permanent visa, U.S. green card, right? And this benefit, right? So the first one that we're gonna have to look at is that right now it's in the U.S. With all the challenge with the immigration, right? So we still have over 700,000 H-1B holder, like people that working for Microsoft, Google, Amazon, right, or Apple. So take a look at this sector, for example. The only thing that gonna keep the resident status for a lot of this client, right, is that they can work and they can keep the resident status, but if they do not have a job, if they got laid off, they got to leave the country, right? So a lot of this client, they own home, their children go to school, right? So it's really important for them, to be able to have a permanent visa, right? So how many ways that we can go in from going from the work visa, H-1B visa, student visa, to go into the to go and get permanent visa, right? First, the first benefit that invest into a licensed regional center is that you don't have to create your own business, right? You don't have to create your own business. And and I know, create your own business in the U.S. as a foreigner, as an immigrant, it's very challenging. You got to deal with all type of tax issue, right? Employment law, and operation, right? But the purpose is to get the business, to create a business, right? So that you can create the employment, the job, right? So that you can justify that with the federal government, so that you can get the resident status. For most of investor, for most of the immigrant, it's very challenging, right? So I myself, for example, I own and operated multiple business, over the past, over the past 22 years. I myself experienced how challenging it is, right? So with investing in the regional center program, you don't have to create your own business. You can become a passive investor, right? So that is definitely a plus, right? So then what about the investment, right? The investment that the client put into a project, put into a project and be a passive investor, that investment can be returned back to you, back to the investor within 5 year, 7 year, right, from the date of the investment. And there's a risk factor involved, of course. Anytime you talk about investment, you have to take the risk factor into the consideration, right? Yeah, so the investment had to be put at risk, per U.S. government requirement, right? So if it's not at risk, then it wouldn't be the investment, right? So if you purchase a home or anything like that, it would not consider the risk it would not consider at risk investment, right? So the investment through the regional center, and the benefit of that would be, it look at it and say, investor can live anywhere, right? They can live anywhere in the U.S. You can have your investment in Seattle, and you can live in Miami, Florida, Los Angeles. It just depends, right? So the thing that about the EB5 investment is that the fund have to come in from the legitimate sources, right, for the investment. So that the funding have to be able to justify that legitimate sources. Like if you have the fund you wanted to invest, they have to be able to be verifiable where the funding coming from, right? For the federal government, that's very important, right? Because sometimes, I know a lot of people, in foreign country, how they gonna be able to come up with the funding, and so there gotta be a legitimate source of the where you get the money coming from. Okay, so contact us, contact our office, so we can really helping you and prefer you to a great legal source that can help you with that. So the other benefit is that if you are an investor, you invested into the immigrant investor program, and your children under 21 years of age is eligible, right? Eligible and receive the green card as well. So look at and say, where are the demand, right? So where are the customer, where the customer coming from, right? Because then if you will look at it and say, yeah, there's even right here, right here in our local marketplace, there's a lot of the people that need the service, right? So a lot of people that working for Microsoft, a lot of people working for Apple, they have the need for it. Also take a look at like University of Washington, more than 30% of the student at the University of Washington is immigrant, right? So then the question here is that if you spending the tuition and go to school, right? And the parent is invest for the child to go to school over here, in the U.S. They have to pay like 3 times more than a U.S. resident, right? So if you're gonna spend 3 times tuition compared to the U.S. resident, and then the boarding, education, tuition, right? Are very expensive for the internationals for the international student to get the U.S. education here. So the investment of education for the parent, for the children, is very significantly high. I've spoken to so many parents from China, from Vietnam. A friend of mine, lived in Vietnam, that sent 2 children to school over here. I mean, like, yeah, it's also it's a big investment for them to do that. So then the question here is, after you get the U.S. After you get the education, after you get the U.S. degree, right? If you don't get if you can get a job and you don't have a job, you end up, don't have the resident status. If you don't have the resident status, then you have to leave the country. So the goal here is that sometimes the student finish the school, they wanted to work for a company they want to work for. And a lot of these international students, they must work for a company in order to get to get this the valid residency, right? So put yourself in that situation and think about how important it is for you to get a permanent visa, right, and a green card, right? So what we wanted to share with you, some best idea and business practice about this particular program. So a lot of us, gonna be a lot of us, we're gonna build a project. We're gonna create a project, and we have to go out there and raising financing on for this particular program, right? So if you do that, then you're wondering what is this one here? What is this program here, right? So first of all, and then say, what are the steps, for an investor to obtaining the green card, right? It go anywhere from like, from sort of fund, I determine if the financing is clean and clear, right? And then, putting sort of fund together, apply for the petition of I-526, and then go into the 2 year before you go get the permanent green card. So what are the steps for obtaining the green card, right? So nothing I wrote down here say what if we wanted to help a client, and if we want to have a project that wanted to be an EB-5 approval project, so so what is the regional center? Why do I need one, right? So those are the things that I wanted to share with you on the EB-5 degree camp that we're gonna be hosting every single month on the third week of the month, right? So, but also say, if I were a developer, if my client to have a real estate project, right, a hotel project, 92% of the EB-5 project in the U.S. is the commercial real estate, right? So and real estate and immigration investment is more like tied to each other, right? So if how many investors in my project that I can eligible for, right? So if you looking at that and say, if I were to create if I myself helping my client, to be able to get in the EB-5 investor into my project, right? So how many client, how many investor approved for the project, right? So that's something that we're gonna share with you. That was something that we're gonna teach with you. For example, we got a project, right? And then we take the it's located inside the DEA target unemployment area, and then and then the project based on the job count, it 1,300 indirect job, and that's the difference between direct job and indirect job, right? So what the difference between the direct job and indirect job? So the project qualify at the DEA, right? As the program was started in 1993. It's started with the U.S. Congress approved the program. At the beginning, starting the minimum investment would be like $500,000. But last November of 2019, the Department of Homeland Security changing the program to $900,000, right? So it's going from $500,000 to $900,000. So then the project is also changing in the DEA target unemployment area, right? So target unemployment area depend, some projects can qualify, other projects not qualified, but we have to determine that. So the next step that we'll be learning and say, when when can my project begin to accept the EB5 capital, right? If you have a project, you go through the project process of due diligence, right? And then you go through a project, determine, based on the construction cost, based on the cost of the project, based on the length of the construction and the length of the length of time that we gonna be building this project, right? And then so based on that, how many jobs that we can create it, right? So 10 indirect job per investor, right? So go into a process to get the offering document complete, right? Before you can go to the market and accepting the investor, right? So a lot of client of yours were thinking like, well, how would I market my project to the potential investor, right? So you know that yeah. So getting the project approved, getting the legal document putting together, right, and then going out there and marketing the project. So those are some of the information that I wanted to share with you. But then also, like, okay, you take a look and say, what would be the deal structure that you can have, right? So what type of structure are the most common, right? So either we look at it and say, well, you can set it up as a loan model or an equity model, right? So what would be the common one? It really depend to the project. Yeah. So how much is the flexibility in the structure of EB5 project? It is flexible in terms of how you structure the deal, right? So we structure that an equity, we structure it as a loan model, and it just case by case, but it has to be determined. So where does the EB5 fit into the capital stack, right? So sometimes you can do, like sometimes you can do 100% of EB5 financing that's no debt, but that probably not realistic with in today's market, because in today's market, a different market compared to before, when we have the market, it's different than where we are right now. The reason I'm saying that is, during the when the program started out, it's very popular back in 1990. There's a program primary in like United Kingdom, Japan, and South Korea, right? But then, the program got so popular in China in 2009 all the way until like 2012 and 14, right? And then 2015 and 2016, where China also have like 82% of total investor in EB5, right? So the if I were to look at it and say, well, this is the today's where the client coming from, right? So as you look at it, back in like 2008, 2009, all the way into like 2015, 16, we got about 80% customer investor coming from China, right? But that all changed now due to the trade war with China, due to the restriction on the currency and investment coming from China to the U.S., right? And then due to the backlog, and that's so that's why investor from China, it took much longer to apply and to get approved for the program, right? If you look at the draft here, China right now, what are the three EB5 market is accounting for the 56% of the total application in For example, in the quarter one and quarter three of 2019, so you look at it that China is making up about 15% of the total client, right, in the program, right? It's no longer be the number one EB5 investor to the US, right? But then we also look at and say like country like Vietnam, right? Um, I came from Vietnam, right? I came from Vietnam. My dad's a U.S. Marine in Vietnam. So the fall of Saigon in 1975. They create the huge migration to the U.S. Right? And so there are 2 million Vietnamese here in the U.S. and that number it continued to rise, right? Because of because of relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam. So Vietnam right now occupy 10%. You can see China population will be like 1.3 plus billion people, but representing 15%, right? And in Vietnam we got a 10% of total investor coming to the U.S. You know, and then we have like South Korea, right? South Korea, Japan, and UK back in when the program is started back in the mid '90s. That would be the large market for EB5, but South Korea represented about 8%. Right? So Taiwan still very popular, so represent 5%. Right? Mexico have about 2%, and a lot of immigrants coming from Mexico to the U.S. A lot of those were. That's why you see all this uh, challenge they have to deal with migrant that come into the U.S. from Mexico, but the legal investor that apply for the program to come into the U.S. from Mexico is 2%, right? So if you look at it inside Hong Kong, it's still 1%. That number probably going to be rise up because due to the fact that there's a huge challenge right now for Hong Kong and invest for the client there because when I left Hong Kong in 1992, Hong Kong returned to China back in 1997. It created massive amount of migrants that moved to Canada and Australia, right? So there was an EB5 program very popular then, right? So it's still Hong Kong and Macau, represented 2% of total. We're expecting that number to go up tremendously, right? So the rest of the world will be like 18%. So, but the larger the source of investor market is still coming from India, right? So 31%. I mentioned to you at the beginning of the program, India, a lot of the yeah, a lot of this a lot of this in a lot of these folk coming to the US to H-1B visa, work in the tech industry for a lot of this high tech company, right? And so India is still number one right now in terms of the investor to the US, right? So as you know, the country of the US is founded on the immigration concept, right? And then back in the 18th and the 19th century, majority of the people will migrate from Europe. But as you can see, the draft today, right? They're all the investor, 98% of the investor today and people that migrated to the US is coming from Asia. That's why our regional center program, we call ourselves US Asia Pacific, right? And so that the licensed regional center that approved with the federal government, right, to facilitate and to support the project that create job in the community, and also helping the investor that have the need to invest, have a great return, for your investment, right, and also obtaining the most important return is a U.S. citizenship, right? So that's a great market out there that we all can tap into and helping our client to grow, right? So I always say that you can in real estate, in business, you know I always share that it's you get enriched by enriching other, right? So this is an opportunity for you to really helping your client to grow, right? Helping your client with the most important investment, which is the real estate and immigration. You know, so I hope that you can learn something from this program today. And again, as always, I appreciate that you taking the time and watching this program, and go out there and have a great day. Thank you.